Good evening and welcome to Free State Central News. My name is Tim Masemola. Today we're going to be talking to Dr. Carl Niehaus. Among the things that we're going to be talking to him about is the campaign whereby they are saying the president must go, the president must resign. Dr. Carl, thank you for welcoming us comfortably at your comfort of your own home.
Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Dr. Carl, before we talk about a lot of things, let's just go back to the previous weekend. We saw the KZN provincial conference. What's your reaction about the conference?
I think the conference was a very interesting development because it is an indication that the ANC membership in KwaZulu-Natal wanted change. They clearly rejected the previous leadership that has now been voted out. It was a clear rejection of Sihlezi Kalala and some of the other leaders. But at the same time, they were also saying that they want to have a united African National Congress. So they want to give new direction, but at the same time they want to bring unity. And that is the message that the newly elected chair of the ANC in the province, Spunisu Duma, provided very clearly. He is there to bring change. He's clearly indicating that there will be change. There's a significant change, at least in tone, with regards to the approach to President Jacob Zuma. And very clearly, him and the secretary said, we will support President Zuma. And we will also make use, as the secretary, the newly elected secretary of the province said, of the resources that we have to support President Zuma when he appears in court. You heard the songs that were being sung right at the beginning, at the opening of the conference, when Paul Mashatile opened the conference. You also heard, obviously, because it was a high-profile event, when President Cyril Ramaphosa came to the conference. You heard the kind of response that President Ramaphosa got. It was not a very welcoming response. There was quite a bit of hostility. But at the same time, the newly elected chair managed to control that situation, gave President Ramaphosa the opportunity to speak, but at the same time there was a message of change, of a different approach, and that the province is clear in terms of its commitment also to address the serious challenges that the province is faced with. And that also includes dealing in a proper way with the royal family, also dealing with the relations with Sembe Church, and all of those issues which have been critical and unfortunately under the previous administration had not been handled properly. So I think it was a positive development. And at the same time, I'm happy that that change happens while the ANC is also working for unity, because that is important.
After what you just said, somebody might want to ask you a question and say, are you saying the previous leadership, they were taking the province towards the wrong direction?
Well, obviously, there's a feeling that the previous leadership had not managed the province in a proper way. Because then, once that feeling is expressed, it is also expressed in terms of how the delegates voted. If the delegates believed that the previous leadership had led the province in the correct way, surely they would have been re-elected. That is the nature of democracy.
Yes. You seem to be vocal when it comes to, there's a new campaign that says Ramaphosa must go. But before we get to that one, how did you get your Zulu name?
Well, I got my name Mpangazita from the Njenje council, who said that they wanted to honor me because of my long-standing struggle against apartheid, the way in which I stood up for what I believe is right, not just during the era of the anti-apartheid struggle, but also in this era, because I've been very clear about what I support and what I reject. I've been very clear in my support for radical economic transformation. And at the same time, I've been very clear in terms of my support for President Zuma and what President Zuma stands for, and also what I reject. And including that rejection is the current leadership of the African National Congress as it is personified by President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Let's go straight to that one. What are the reasons behind Ramaphosa School?
I think the reasons are very evident. It goes back to the manner in which President Ramaphosa was elected already at the 54th National Conference in 2017. More than R1 billion were used in the run-up and during that conference in order to secure President Ramaphosa being elected and some of his supporters in the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. Now, just on that issue, to use money in that way is un-African National Congress. It is also in contradiction of the constitution of the ANC. The Constitution says very clearly that no one must use money in order to influence the outcome of elections. But it did happen. So already the legitimacy of President Ramaphosa's election at that conference is seriously in question. Subsequently, you've seen some of the stories that came forward. It included the Bosasa debacle in Parliament. No one can doubt that President Ramaphosa was telling fibs to the National Assembly. It's clear. He said that he doesn't know about the relationship between his son and Bosasa. Then he claimed subsequently that there was a contract. There was no contract. He then proceeded to tell all kinds of stories about the funds that were provided for his campaign.
Yes.
We have to ask the question, why is President Ramaphosa so concerned about sealing and closing up the CR17 bank statements? If there's nothing to hide, if it is not true that he had bought votes, that he had potentially even bought parts of the judiciary, why does he want to close these accounts at all and every cost? That is a serious question. And then more recently we saw the Pala Pala Farmgate scandal. It's a debacle. Very serious charges had been brought against President Ramaphosa by Mr. Arthur Fraser. Those are not piffy little charges. If you as a president contravene the foreign exchange regulations and you have illicitly more than $4 million United States dollars stashed away on your farm, if you abduct or get some of your presidential protection team people to abduct people, not only inside the country, but from across the border in Namibia, bring them illegally into South Africa, then take them to your residence, your private residence at your farm, interrogate and torture them. Among those that it's being done to is a woman who worked on the farm. Those are serious issues. Vladimir Ketchev, who was, let me just make this point because it's important. Vladimir Ketchev, who was sentenced by the Gauteng South High Court for abduction and torture, got 35 years of imprisonment. President Ramaphosa is accused of exactly the same kind of conduct. Surely this must seriously reflect on the correctness of keeping President Ramaphosa, the appropriateness of keeping President Ramaphosa as President of the African National Congress and of the country.
Yes, you spoke about money being used during the previous conference, the ANC National Conference. But many people are saying it looks like money has always been part of the game. Why are you talking about it now? Because it looks like all these conferences, there were those who had been influenced by using money.
If it's the case that money had been used
Yes.
in any of the conferences, it's wrong. because we want to see democracy in the African National Congress. And if it is the case that money had been used, it is in contravention of the ANC's constitution.
Yes.
So to say that it had happened in the past, if it happened, and therefore one must turn a blind eye to it happening now, is like saying what two wrongs make a right. I know about what has happened at the 54th National Conference at Nasrec, and I'm concerned about what happened there. If anyone brings me evidence about that it happened somewhere else, the same rules should apply to that particular issue. But the use of money in order to influence the outcome of elections within the African National Congress is unconstitutional, and in fact anyone who is responsible or involved in the use of money to influence elections should be disciplined by the African National Congress's National Executive Committee. That's why there were members of the ANC who wrote a letter to the now departed, who passed on, Deputy Secretary General Comrade Jesse Duarte, and demanded that the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress should actually institute disciplinary action against President Ramaphosa. Unfortunately, Comrade Jesse Duarte pushed that letter out of the way and didn't proceed with disciplinary action. I regret that she had done so. She should have followed the provisions of the Constitution, and she should have taken action and made sure that President Ramaphosa was indeed charged.
Let's come to the Lephalaphala issue. Do you think that public funds were looted?
There's indications that the South African Police Service and part of the Presidential Protection Team were used to cover up this case.
Yes.
There was no case declared to the South African police, and yet there were all kinds of actions. As I've indicated to you, people were abducted, people were brought back to the Phala farm homestead, they were interrogated there. It is evident that the head of the Presidential Protection Team, Major General Wally Roode, has been involved in that. So money was used. There are indications that a helicopter was used to fly up and down and do these things. Now, all of this is state funds. I'm not saying that the funds that were found at President Ramaphosa's farm were state funds.
Okay.
I don't know, because he has not taken us into his confidence. But what I am saying about those funds is that it is very strange that the president would have more than 4 million United States dollars undeclared on his property, and that he would be so concerned not to let it come out that he had that money on his property that he would not even declare a serious robbery like that. If I lose that kind of money, I would be right down the road to the police station 2 blocks away from here in a run in order to open a case, because I wouldn't like to lose my money. But the president wanted to cover it up. So clearly there was something untoward going on here. And I think part of the problem that he was faced with is that he knew very well that it was illegal to have that money in contravention of the International Foreign Exchange FICA regulations of 2018. And that is a serious crime.
People are saying you are running up and down opening cases so that the president could step aside. Is that true?
Well, the president has to abide by the same rules and the same principles that he and the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress apply to other people.
Yes.
Now, remember that the resolution on the so-called stepping aside issue, which was taken at the 54th National Conference of the ANC, didn't simply say that you must step aside when you are charged. That resolution said when there are serious allegations, when you are accused of all kinds of malfeasance, you must be prepared in terms of your own consciousness as a member of the African National Congress to step aside. There are 10 different clauses in that original resolution.
Yes.
But the National Executive Committee of the ANC then, totally illegally as far as I'm concerned in terms of the ANC constitution, decide to rewrite that resolution. Take one of the provisions that were in the original resolution, that you must step aside when you are charged, elevate that to the only issue. Use it then to target certain people, because certain people get charged and others don't get charged. There's the example of Comrade Ace Magashule. There's the example of Comrade Zandile Gumede. There's Comrade Bongo. Those are the comrades who are charged. Interestingly enough, they all are those who are in some way or another disagreeing with President Ramaphosa and the dominant faction within the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. Now, why must they be forced to step aside?
Okay.
But others don't. Now, listen to what President Ramaphosa then does with regards to the former Minister of Health, Zweli Mkhize. Zweli Mkhize has serious allegations brought against him. He is concerned, he complains even that the SIU is not behaving properly towards him, but yet President Ramaphosa puts pressure on him to step down as the Minister of Health. Now President Ramaphosa has serious allegations, very serious allegations. Suddenly he says, well, you know, I'm not going to do so. I'm not going to step aside. I don't feel the pressure, the same pressure that I expected from Zweli Mkhize to step aside with regards to the digital vibes issue. Now, I'm saying I will only step aside if I'm charged.
Yes.
So he hides behind this issue of being charged. And remember, who appointed the head of the National Prosecuting Authority? Who appoints the Commissioner of Police, who recently appointed a new Commissioner of Police? The President. Who removed the Public Protector a day after, through suspension, removed her, a day after she sent him 31 very, very pertinent questions about the Pala Pala Farmgate saga. Now, those are the issues that we should concern ourselves about.
People are saying the RET forces, they will want to see the cancellation of the step-aside resolution because most of their comrades, they are being charged. And it's not going to work on their favor. How true is that?
It's not about RET forces wanting to see the step-aside resolution being removed. I believe as ANC members, we must say that the step-aside resolution, as it was reformulated by the NEC, as I've said to you, which I believe is unconstitutional in terms of the ANC constitution, should be chucked in the dustbin. It is destroying the African National Congress. It is undermining the situation within the ANC in terms of equal treatment for everyone. It is a deeply divisive resolution which is destroying the unity within the African National Congress. That is why the KZN Provincial Conference resolved that the so-called stepping aside resolution should be done away with. And over this weekend, it wasn't just KZN that made that decision. In Limpopo, there was a Provincial General Council which passed a similar resolution, and in Mpumalanga, there was a Provincial General Council. So we've now got 3 of the largest ANC provinces saying we must get rid of this stepping aside resolution because it is destroying the African National Congress.
As the ANC, how are you going to prove to South Africans that you want to deal with corruption? If many people are saying it's one of the best resolutions that you have, if you are charged, step aside, and you are found innocent, you will come back. How are you going to prove to South Africans that you want to deal decisively with corruption?
You deal with corruption by, first of all, acting properly in terms of the law. There's a provision, a maxim within our national constitution that states that every person is deemed innocent until proven guilty in front of a court of law. I agree with that. I was part of the Constitutional Assembly that wrote that constitution. It is an international, proper legal principle. Now, how do you undermine that principle? By bringing in a resolution that indicates that a person is actually deemed to be guilty until that person finds himself or herself to be proved not to be guilty. That is turning that whole very important legal principle on its head. That's wrong. And I was very interested last night. I listened to Mr. Zizi Kodwa. He was being interviewed by Professor J.J. Tabani. And suddenly Zizi Kodwa, when he's asked about President Ramaphosa and that President Ramaphosa is now in trouble with Phala Phala, suddenly Zizi Kodwa is now saying, I agree with that maxim, that everyone is innocent until proven guilty by a court of law. But I haven't heard him saying that about Comrade Ace Magashule and Comrade Zandile Gumede. No. Then suddenly the principle was not applicable.
But no, wait. The same thing about you, that you've never said anything about the president, but you seem to be protecting the other faction.
No, I have been clear.
Yes.
With regards to President Zuma,
yes,
Ace Magashule, and Zandile Gumede,
yes,
that I will support them because they have to appear in front of a court and they will not be deemed to be guilty until found guilty by a court of law.
Yes.
You asked me, how does one prove that you want to fight corruption? You fight corruption by the proper application of the law. You fight corruption by making sure that those who are guilty of corruption across the board, it doesn't matter whether they belong to a group that supports President Cyril Ramaphosa or whether they are part of those who support the official economic policy program of the ANC, which is radical economic transformation. Yes. Everyone, Lady Justice's eyes must be covered with a blindfold. She must be blind. Under the current situation, she's not blind. That blindfold has been removed. She now has laser eyes, targeting certain people and not targeting others. That is not justice. Selective justice is injustice. And no one will convince me that selective justice can help us to fight corruption. Yes, we must fight corruption. Yes. But we must not weaponize the issue of corruption for party, factional, political purposes. Because if we do that, we destroy the whole intention of the law to treat everyone equal. Whether you're the president or whether you're Joe Soap or anyone else in the country.
We all know the relationship that you have with the former Free State Premier. And in the Free State, there are two issues that you'll forever hear people talking about. The asbestos issue and the free reader issue. What's your take about those things?
Well, you see, the reason why Comrade Ace Magashule, the Secretary General of the African National Congress, has been charged with regards to this so-called asbestos matter is on the very flimsy charge of oversight. Now, as far as I know, the Premier of the province is not an accounting officer. There was an accounting officer responsible for this matter. The oversight charge, as far as I'm concerned, is simply a tool to try and target him so that he could have a charge against him, so that the reformulated resolution on stepping aside could kick in order to remove him from his position as Secretary General of the ANC, because that is the engine room, the administrative engine room of the African National Congress, so that all kinds of shenanigans can go on within the ANC. Up to now, there are no clear, well-delineated charges and a proper docket presented against Comrade Ace Magashule with regards to this issue of the asbestos. How long have we been to that court? I go there every time with him, to the High Court in Bloemfontein. Every time we go there. The docket is not ready. There must be a change in legislation, I believe, and the National Assembly should move in and change the legislation and demand from the National Prosecuting Authority that you should only be able to prosecute someone once you've got your ducks in a row and you actually have proper charges formulated and a docket ready. How do you have charges brought against someone and you can't even present a proper charge sheet? That is injustice.
With the failure of these two projects, who should be held accountable? The Free State government? Who?
Well, let there be clarity on what went wrong, and then let there be a clear legal process on acting against those who are accountable for what went wrong if something went wrong. I don't know. I hear allegations about some of these matters. I do not know what is the truth, but I do see that Comrade Ace Magashule is ending up in court on the asbestos matter on a flimsy charge which I don't believe actually exists. I don't believe that there is something like oversight to be charged for.
Honestly and openly, how do you feel about the judiciary of the country?
I wish I could say that the judiciary in this country is actually not biased and is treating everyone equal. But it is not. It is biased. It is treating people in an unequal way. There are many examples. I've given you the example of what happened with Ace Magashule. I can talk about myself. On the 8th of July last year, 2021, I was arrested in front of the Escort Correctional Services facility where President Zuma at that time was incarcerated on what I believe to have been an illegal sentence by the Constitutional Court. I was arrested that afternoon, talking live on national television to the SABC. You can see from the footage of that live interview, there are no more than about 10 people around me, perhaps even less. That same morning, the Minister of Justice, Ronald Lamola, was in front of that same prison with a large crowd in front of him, not even having a mask on. I'm nicely and properly there with my mask. Nothing happened to him. I'm arrested. The magistrate in that matter, when she chucked this case out, when we applied for it to be dismissed and she agreed with us, she said to the prosecutor, "You brought Mr. Niehaus here for a year, wasting my time as the magistrate and his time. And I have a question for you. Why was Minister Lamola not dealt with? Why must Mr. Niehaus be dealt with? This is selective justice." Now, it's not me saying so. It is a magistrate who is an officer in court. And on that basis, I am taking the South African government to court on wrongful arrest and malicious prosecution. And this kind of thing happens all the time. You know, I want to tell you, listen to this one. I've tried to bring charges of defamation against Ronald Lamola, yes, because he made allegations against me saying that I have supposedly stolen state money against me and 7 other members of an organization called the Gauteng RET President Zuma Support Group. For 4 years, we cannot get that matter onto the courtroom. 4 years. I cannot get a defamation case onto the courtroom. Now I must hear that one of the lawyers in that case, one of my lawyers, had been approached by a clerk of the court who said, we can get it onto the roll if you pay us some bribe. Wow. Has our legal system now been turned into something that can be auctioned off? So a place for you to get into a court, to have a proper defamation case heard, is now suddenly auctioned off by some clerk. You see what has happened to our legal system.
Yeah, but people are saying the only time they're going to hear something about our judiciary is when they act not in favor of your friends. Of course, former president and the former premier of the Free State. That's when we're going to hear that we don't have the judiciary in South Africa, the judiciary is captured. Why people are saying that?
I don't know. Because I am simply raising cases which are clearly unfair. Today, now, as we sit here, there's a whole process of action and trying to suspend the Justice, the Chief Justice of the Western Cape High Court, Justice Hlophe. He is being targeted. Why? Why are certain people being targeted all the time, while others are not? And am I supposed not to raise those questions when such targeting happens? Am I supposed not to raise the question about the way in which selectively Minister Lamola has been treated and the way in which I have been treated?
Yeah.
Am I supposed not to be concerned about what the current Chief Justice was doing when he was the head of the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture? The very clear biased manner in which he treated President Zuma. Am I supposed not to be concerned when President Zuma requests that he must recuse himself as chair of that commission? He then puts himself in the position of being both the judge and also a witness. Wow. And he gives a judgment on his own evidence. When President Zuma then takes it to the High Court, he rushes the case against President Zuma past the High Court to the Constitutional Court, where he is the acting Chief Justice. Where those judges who now have to decide on the matter that he brings, both now as the chair of the Commission and the acting Chief Justice, have their futures in his hands, knowing that he's most likely to become also finally appointed as the permanent Chief Justice, as has happened. Now the last example. President Ramaphosa goes to the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. There's all kinds of things to say there. The Chief Justice, who is also the chair of that commission, has to decide on this evidence that President Ramaphosa brings. While he is busy deciding on it, President Ramaphosa is in the position to decide on whether he's going to become the final appointment as Chief Justice. Isn't that a serious conflict of interest? How would you respond if I sit here and I say to you, you know, this is what I'm saying, this is how I deal with these issues. You must decide on whether I am guilty or not guilty, whether I've acted correctly or wrongly. But remember, I am the one who's going to decide your future. I'm going to decide whether you get a job or not. How are you going to respond? I'm not trying to put you in the hot water. I'm not saying you will act without integrity.
Yes.
But the fundamental fact of the matter is there's a conflict of interest. That conflict of interest has been denied.
Yes, due to time, I will have to ask you my last question.
Sure.
It's a very personal question directed to you. There's this rumor that is flying around. That is why we came here. We wanted to hear it from yourself. Did at some point did you maybe fake that one of your parents passed away?
No, I didn't. There was a story, I know what you're referring to, in the Sunday Times. Suddenly on the front page of the Sunday Times, it was very interesting timing. It was about I think 3 weeks before the 2017 National Conference. And remember, I played a leading role in the campaign for Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Suddenly there's a story, yeah, no, I've told someone that my mum passed on and all of that. It's a load of rubbish. At one stage it was my dad. Then suddenly it was my mum. Lies, damn lies. Propaganda to try and undermine me and also to try and undermine Comrade Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma's campaign. My mum is well and alive. I can show you on the mantelpiece there is a photo of her. She's 93 years old. I've spoken to my sister and to my mother. I said, should I take this matter up and take legal action? And my sister said to me, don't do that. Your mum is 93. Do you want a situation where people are going to demand that at that age, frail as she is, she must go and appear in court? I'm not doing that. But I'm not going to allow people to besmirch my name with rubbish. If I had made such claims, and those claims were true, do you think I would be sitting here? Do you think I would not have had a charge against me for fraud? Me, Carl Niehaus, in this country, where people are looking out to get me all the time, where I can get grabbed in front of the escort prison for nothing. Do you think that charge would not have come? When these allegations were made, and there were other allegations in 2009 about, that I had acted improperly.
Yes.
I asked my then lawyer, Mr. Ian Smallsmith, a very, very prominent lawyer in this country, I said to him, write to the National Prosecuting Authority and ask them if they are intending to charge me. Are there any investigations against me? He wrote to them. They wrote back. They said, there are no investigations pending against Mr. Niehaus. We have no intention to charge him. We made that letter public. None of these white monopoly capitalist media reported on it. The only newspaper that reported on it was the Afrikaans newspaper Rapport. You know what they said? In Afrikaans, glibberige Niehaus ontsnap weer. Slippery Niehaus escapes again. What was I escaping from? The National Prosecuting Authority said there's no case.
This coming weekend, we are approaching the policy conference. Which policies are you going to say, these ones we want to see the African National Congress implement?
You see, I've got a problem that we are going straight into a policy conference. The Constitution of the ANC states that there must be a National General Council, and then after that, there must be a policy conference. Now we've chucked the National General Council away.
Was there any explanation provided to you saying?
They claim it's because of COVID-19 that it was not practically possible. Why can't we have first, as the first part of this meeting that is due to start with registration this coming Thursday, why can't we first have a National General Council? I'll tell you why. Because a National General Council can not just deal with talking about the formulation of policy. It can evaluate implementation of policy and make recommendations on the implementation. The current Ramaphosa administration...
The current NEC, they are trying to avoid
They want to avoid accountability because they know the only resolution that they really implemented of the resolutions of the 54th National Conference was this farcical stepping aside resolution.
Yes.
What they didn't implement a single one of the economic policy resolutions of radical economic transformations. Not one.
Yes, speaking about resolutions and step aside, previously we used to have what we call the scorpions. And we one way or the other, people were saying, these people are working. And we saw the scorpions were dissolved. And everybody was surprised. And now you are pushing for the cancellation of step aside resolution. Do you think people are going to take the ANC serious going forward if they can repeat the same mistake that they did with the scorpions?
You see, the issue around the scorpions was about political influence. And the hawks were then created as supposedly a structure that will be less influenced by direct political intervention. Now, we continue to see political intervention. The issue that I'm asking from you now is, why is the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress not prepared to face accountability?
But you are in a better
The
position.
National General
You are in a better
Council
position
must
to
take
ask me those
place.
questions. Why aren't you debating such things within the movement?
But I am debating them in the movement, but what must I do when the movement closes the doors to debate?
Are you still a member of the ANC in good standing?
Absolutely.
Are you suspended?
No, I'm not suspended.
Okay.
Listen to this. I was charged because I said that our judiciary is biased and has been used by certain factions in the ANC for their own purposes. Exactly what I've said now. That charge, they then suspended me. They never managed to get the charge to stick. In terms of the ANC constitution, if you're not charged and you're suspended, after 30 days, the suspension lapses. So it lapsed. But you know how our media works. They will announce to the world, Niehaus has been suspended. But when the suspension lapses, choop still. Silence. You don't tell the world now, no. You see, this was a farcical charge, and therefore he is now no longer suspended. I'm not suspended.
Do you think factional politics are destroying the ANC?
Totally. The African National Congress has been torn apart by factional politics. The factions in the ANC is killing the African National Congress. We need to change that. But we cannot change it by turning something which is true economic policy of the African National Congress, such as radical economic transformation, then into a faction. The people who want to say that RET is a faction are talking a load of nonsense. Those who say that RET is a faction are the faction.
What's your take about the former president's relationship with the Guptas?
Well, I don't know. I personally have never in my life met the Guptas. I've never met them. I've never had any dealings with them. I do not know what their situation in this country was because I didn't deal with them. I heard allegations. Those allegations can be tested, but they must be tested in a proper way, in the same way that I told you it must be done on an equal basis in front of the law. But no one must come and tell me that the Guptas were responsible for state capture. State capture in this country goes back way beyond the last 9 years of President Zuma's time and administration as president. The big state capture in this country happened over centuries and decades. The big state capture in this country was done by Rupert, by Oppenheimer, by all of those. Those white big monopoly capital companies are in control of the economy of this country. Compared to them, the Guptas was like a spaza shop. What I can see is that the Guptas were beginning to disrupt here and there, not even in a big way, some of that state capture that these big companies have done. These long evergreen contracts that they had with Eskom and everything, and what Glencore was up to, all of those things. So the Guptas come and needle in there. This is irritating, let's deal with it. Now, I'm not saying that they necessarily were always behaving properly. I don't know. Let them be investigated. But don't come and turn someone into a scapegoat for state capture, while the real scapegoat is being protected. And why is the real scapegoat being protected? Because there are vested interests, and there are people like President Ramaphosa who are directly involved in some of those companies. We all know the relationship that President Ramaphosa had with Glencore. Now, Glencore is internationally today the polecat of the world. It is a fundamentally corrupt company. It was exposed by the United States. In South Africa, Glencore stands exposed. Why does that not implicate also in President Ramaphosa? I want to know why Glencore has not been charged. I want to know why the bank accounts of Glencore has not been closed in the same way that bank accounts of Iqbal Survey and of Sekunjalo has been closed. Steinhoff, the biggest corruption story in the history of South Africa. Billions of rands just disappeared. Steinhoff has still bank accounts. No bank come and closes Steinhoff's accounts. But wow, Sekunjalo's accounts must be closed. Suddenly there's reputational risk about Sekunjalo. You want to tell me that Steinhoff doesn't hold reputational risk? You want to tell me that Marius Jooste doesn't hold reputational risk?
You've said enough.
Wow.
You've said a mouthful. Pangazit, thank you for your time.
Thank you.